Well, hello there, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Rogue Squadron. I am your host, Philip, and in today's episode, we're going to be breaking down one of the very first Christmas movies to come out this year in time for the holiday season. It is going to be Thanksgiving this week, and we are slowly approaching the beginning of December and the countdown to Christmas and the New Year. So, because of that, obviously the movies have put out a couple of different Christmas movies here and there. Some of them that are a little religious, some of them are more like family friendly, wholesome. And we had one that came out not too recently, probably about like 2 weeks ago, known as Red One. Obviously, the main stars in this film are going to be Chris Evans, who plays a character known as Jack, and then also Dwayne The Rock Johnson. And then we also have the lovely actor that played J.K. Simmons in the Spider-Man franchise. So we do have a definitely pretty star-studded cast. If I find their names, I will pronounce them correctly. We also had somebody that played in, I believe, Charlie's Angels, the original Charlie's Angels. So we had a overall relatively pretty stacked cast for this movie. I had the pleasure of seeing it, obviously, with my mom, because it looked cute. It looked like something that obviously people would enjoy. So we gave it a shot, and because of that, I'm going to sit here and just kind of give you my critique and my honest thoughts and opinions about the movie, and just exactly how well it did and how much money it made. Let me actually bring that up real quick. Let me see if I can multitask real quick. Just let me put this off to the side real quick. Oh, I can actually do this. This actually works out pretty good. Sorry, I'm like, I have a computer, but then I'm also like recording on my iPad. So it's like a little bit of a two for one. So let me get this up real quick. Let me just get all the necessary information up on the screen so I know what I'm talking about. Okay. Um, all right, so obviously, like I said, we're going to be talking about Red One today. But before I get into that, I thought I would just take a second to let you guys know how I'm doing, and what exactly has been going on. Because obviously, you guys probably realized that there was no episode last week. And for that, I apologize. Obviously, life has gotten a little busy. And my week last week, and then especially this weekend, has been extremely hectic and crazy. For those of you that don't know, I do work at the movie theaters. I work at AMC, and this opening weekend, we just had Wicked, we had Gladiator 2, and just yesterday we started showing Moana 2. So it was an extremely busy week and weekend. I worked like the last like 5 days in a row. I am extremely beat. I basically just rolled out of bed today, had a cup of coffee. I'm doing laundry. I'm trying to catch up on cleaning. That is why my hair looks like a mess. So I'm trying to sit down and record a couple of episodes for the YouTube channel and for the podcast, just so you guys have something to watch for next week, and then the second week of December as well, because it is just going to keep getting crazier and crazier at the movies. So I want to make sure I can catch up where I can. I still have a couple of shows to catch up on. I've just been all over the place. Um, Other than that, I'm doing pretty good. I'm putting in the gym time and going to the gym where I can. So that's been great. Like I said, I've just been working a lot of hours to get some more money. So that's been doing pretty good. And today and tomorrow I have off. So tomorrow will be Thanksgiving. So obviously when this video comes out, it already would have been Thanksgiving. So for those of you that celebrate and are spending time with family, make sure you enjoy each other's company and eat some good food and drinks and watch some football, and just overall just take the day to relax. And then if you're doing any Black Friday shopping, please be careful and make sure you get those good deals, obviously, because duh, Black Friday. Um, but yeah, other than that, now that we've gone through the whole spiel of how I'm doing, I will have to do this again in a second episode. So if you guys see me in the same getup, I'm just recording these episodes on the same day. Um, we are going to dive into Red One. So I don't really have a time frame for these videos. As you guys have noticed, sometimes they're long, sometimes they're not. It just kind of depends on how long I'm rambling. They could be 15 minutes, they could be 20 minutes, they could be even longer. So I don't want to bore you guys with just a bunch of rambling. So I'd rather just kind of get straight to the facts. give you the box office revenue, give you the IMDb scores, the Rotten Tomato scores, give you my pros and cons, and then leave you with my opinion and then my rating. And if that's all you guys want, then obviously let me know. But I'm just going to do it at my own pace and go from there. So, like I said, we are going to be discussing Red One. This film came out in 2024, obviously. It came out on November 15th of 2024. So the content rating here is PG-13. The genre, they kind of classify into a couple of different ones. It could be seen as an action adventure. It could be seen as a comedy, and also a fantasy as well, because they do kind of they do dive into some like the mythological aspects of this world a little bit. So I guess that's why it's considered some fantasy. We see that it is directed by a man named Jake Kazdan. If we click on this real quick, let's see if it brings up some other movies. He also had the pleasure of filming movies such as Jumanji, The Next Level, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, Bad Teacher, Sex Tape, and let's see, anything else. And that's pretty much it. So if you know him from those movies, that is what he directed. Going back to just some of the cast that was in this movie, we have some stars. Obviously, we have Dwayne The Rock Johnson playing Callum Drift. We have Chris Evans playing Jack O'Malley. We have Lucy Liu playing Zoe. J.K. Simmons is obviously playing Nick. I didn't know his name was actually J.K. Simmons. I thought that was his character. We have J.K. Simmons playing Nick. Bonnie Hunt playing Mrs. Claus. And we have Christopher Hugh playing the voice of Krampus. You guys would know him as a character from Game of Thrones. Oh, it's going to bother me if I don't figure out his name now. But he played a character in Game of Thrones. He was Tormund Giantsbane in Game of Thrones. That's who he was. So if any of you are Game of Thrones fans, then you will know exactly who that is. And then I feel like the last one we should cover is just Kiernan Shipka as Grilla, which was like the main villain of the film. So that is basically, the cast and what you need to know about them. So again, a decently, star-studded lineup. Which was good for the movie. Definitely probably brought a lot of people into seats and everything. Yeah, so now we're going to get into the scores. So obviously we went over the ratings and everything. We went over the cast. Now we are going to go over the scores. So on IMDb, it got a 6.9 out of 10. Now, this is a fairly average score for a movie. Again, it's not the greatest, but it's also not the worst. So IMDb was actually a lot more generous with their score. We shift over to Rotten Tomatoes, and this is where it gets a little bit interesting for Rotten Tomatoes. We have, for the audience score, we have a verified hot popcorn meter of about 90%. So the audience absolutely loved this film. Which is fantastic. I mean, this is definitely something that you want to see. Again, if you've been following, Two Sons podcast, or if you've been following Rogue Squadron, you should know by now that we usually tend to look at the audience scores versus the critic scores, because obviously the critics are there to do one thing, and that is to critique it. But really what's driving people to the theaters and making the money is the people that go and see the movie. So the fact that this has a 90% audience score is fantastic. However, obviously the critics were not very fond of this movie, and it is certified rotten, or just rotten, at 31%. So we see a complete turnaround from the audience score to the critic score. Just to kind of give you like some ideas of some of these critic scores, the critics' consensus was basically, overall, it was wrapped in slick packaging, but wholly lacking in holiday magic. Red One is one ho-ho-hum action adventure. This is where, like, it kind of gets, like, because, like, I didn't really see this as a Christmas movie. I mean, yes, it did take place during Christmas time, and obviously it, brings the magic of the holidays and Christmas to the screen. But I don't know. I just didn't really get that, like, holly jolly, like, Christmassy feel from it. Oh, I lost my... Okay, there we go. So, again, just take that with a grain of salt. Audience says that, obviously led by The Rock, the entire ensemble delivers ample servings of naughty and nice that may leave you humming, oh, what fun it is in a red one open sleigh. Um, so again, this is rated PG-13. I didn't really see it as a kids film, honestly, when the trailer came out and everything. It did seem like it had a little bit more of like a mature comedy. There were a lot of parents that brought their families and kids, so I guess you could bring their kids, and technically, it could be a kids movie. But it definitely seemed like it was geared a little bit more towards that mature audience. Um, so obviously, we're looking at pretty average scores. I mean, again, IMDb gave it about a 7 out of 10, which is a fairly average score. Rotten Tomatoes, not so much. But again, I think what is important to focus on is the IMDb score of about 7 out of 10, which is pretty average. And then that 90% audience score on Rotten Tomato is huge. And I think that's really something to kind of um, drive people into the seat, so to speak. If you are going to go see this movie. Um, the gross revenue for this movie, so far, it's made about 38.92 million USD. If I could find how much the movie costed to make, I could see if it's made its budget back, but I don't know if I could find it. Let me see if good old Wikipedia will tell us how much it made to make this film. Okay. So this is where it's a little tricky because again, the statistics are not always going to be exactly accurate because they're always changing. I mean, Red One is still out in theaters to this day, so people are still going to be seeing it. The budget for the movie was about 200 to 250 million. So based on the statistics that I just gave you, this movie has not made its money back yet. So that is a little concerning. Um, you could argue most of that budget probably went into the cast and their salary and their pay, especially if you have people like Dwayne Johnson, Chris Evans, J.K. Simmons. Those are some pretty big names, so most of their budget is probably going to be taken from that. However, again, it still is in theaters. I see it staying in theaters, um, probably for the rest of the year, to be honest, because it is kind of a Christmassy film. So hopefully it will make its budget back. I think if it does stay in movie theaters for the rest of the year, I could see it making its budget back, but not really grossing too much of a profit. So unfortunately, it looks like this movie might be a flop when you're looking at like a monetary position. However, again, people seem to be absolutely loving the film, according to the audience scores. So I think if you are a fan of any of these actors and actresses, and you just want kind of like like a fun, maybe a little bit more mature holiday movie, I highly suggest going to see this movie. I mean, I absolutely loved it. I first I wasn't going to see it, and then I'm glad that I saw it because it was good. I mean, like I said, it wasn't the best thing since sliced bread, but it was good. And that is a perfect segue basically into what I think some of the pros and cons of Red One are. So we're gonna start with the cons, obviously, because we want to end on a good note with the pros. Um, so some of the cons, tonally, like the tone of the movie, it's a little uneven. The movie struggles to balance its serious and comedic elements, leading to a disjointed feel. You definitely kind of get a sense of that as like they are trying to build some sort of like really serious story in the background. But at the same time, they're not very consistent with it. Like, there might be like some scenes or shots where it's like super serious, and the next thing you know, it's kind of funny. So they didn't do the best job really balancing the two. The villain was a little like lackluster, and I mean, her motivations were pretty solid, and definitely would obviously ruin Christmas. Um, but again, it definitely really struggled to kind of keep you in the moment, because I feel like most of the movie was kind of like unserious and kind of had like more of a comedic feel to it. So it was kind of like hard to get serious and be like, oh shit, there might not be a Christmas because she kidnapped Santa Claus. Um, um, so yeah, so definitely the tone of the movie, it could have been a little bit more even. It could have been a little bit more consistent. But this is more of like a lower con. I don't think this is like something to seriously, kind of dog on the film for. Um, going into the film, I didn't really think it was going to have that, more serious tone. I felt like it was going to be more of a comedy. But again, just having a nice even tone throughout the film is definitely a plus, and this is something that they definitely struggled with. Um, Another con that I saw was in over the top villain. So we have a villain by the name of Grilla. So she's basically this like holiday witch, and basically her plan throughout the entire film is to kidnap Santa Claus and use his magic to trap all the naughty people of the world into these like little snow globes. And she thinks by trapping all the naughty people in the world, then the only people that will be left are going to be like the good and righteous people. So on paper, it sounds like a great idea. However, the film explores that everybody is naughty and everybody does bad things. So theoretically, you just be trapping everybody. So it's not as black and white as she thinks it is. Um, so, again, I don't necessarily think she's too over the top. I think her motivations, like, it made sense to her. But again, like, it wasn't as obviously as black and white as she thought it was. So I do think at some point she does go like a little overboard. Again, I think because of that, like, uneven tone throughout the film, it was kind of hard to take her seriously. So, in some aspects, she might have seemed a little bit over the top. Um, but I think overall, I think the actress that played her, I think she did a great job. Like I said, her motivations, to her, when you're looking at the character itself and you're looking at the motivations of that character, they were pretty solid for their mindset. Again, to the audience, obviously it's not that black and white because, it's totally more of a gray area. Nobody is just perfectly good, and then at the same time, nobody is perfectly bad. So to us, it doesn't make sense. To her, it makes sense. But again, I think those 2 points, so I think like the tone and then the villain, they kind of go hand in hand because we didn't get more of those serious moments. We couldn't really understand her and take her more seriously. They could have included maybe some sort of backstory, maybe like a driving force behind like why she wants to do this. We kind of got a little bit of background information on her, like mythological wise, but really no, like, it's not like she had a bad experience when she was younger and then now all she wants to do is trap all the naughty people. If we maybe would have got a little bit more of a backstory, it would have made a little bit more sense. But because she was just kind of thrown in here and they're like, oh yeah, she's so and so and this is what she does, it was a little just like, okay. uh, so yeah, I think those two definitely go hand in hand. um, a third point that I found, whether you agree or disagree, it did have a little bit of a generic plot. So, I mean, despite its unique premise, the whole buddy cop duo between, Chris Evans and Dwayne Johnson, was a little generic and a little unoriginal. I think they did have a good dynamic. I think, the banter between Chris Evans and Dwayne Johnson, I think was pretty good. But again, we've seen that trope in, plenty of movies, the whole good cop, bad cop. So it wasn't exactly original, but it wasn't also the worst thing in the world. I mean, I think that's where a lot of the comedic value comes from. I think these two work really well together, and they have really good chemistry, which is actually one of the pros that I was gonna cover. Um, it would have been a little bit more. I mean, I thought because his name was Jack, maybe they were gonna go with like a storyline where like he's actually Jack Frost, and then he kind of like joins the whole like mythological world. It doesn't seem like they did that. uh, so I can see why it's a little generic. Again, I think with a film like this, you could critique it like any way you can. But some films like this, you just need to kind of like turn your brain off and just enjoy. But again, this wouldn't be a react or a critique channel or podcast if I didn't point out the pros and the cons. Finally, the last con that I have is that it did have a really high budget. Again, we talked about having a budget of about 250 million, um, which is a little excessive, especially with its mixed reception. Again, I think most of this budget comes from the salaries that they had to pay these actors and actresses to get people in the theaters to go see it. I just think overall, they thought if they added this like star-studded cast, that it would drive people into seats, which would make their money back. Obviously, we have not seen that so far. Like I said, if they're lucky, they might break even and make back their budget, but I don't see them doubling or tripling, their budget at all. So these are a couple of the cons, so I think overall, Um, to take away from this film, negatively, the plot was a little generic. The tone of the movie gets a little uneven at some points, and the budget and the villain, are a little questionable and might ruin the film for some people. So those are really the cons that I found for this film. Going to the pros, however, again, I just touched upon star power. So, like I said, the movie features Dwayne Johnson and Chris Evans, whose comedic chemistry is a highlight. So they do have good chemistry together, which is definitely a highlight of the film. It makes you laugh, it makes you chuckle. Again, even though the buddy cop routine is a little generic, they do it well, and they definitely make the highlight of the film. So I think the two of them, like I said, they work really well together, and their dynamic really boosted the film up for me. Um, Something else that was actually pretty interesting about this film was its unique concept. So the idea of reimagining Santa Claus in his world with a modern twist is intriguing. So they took this fantasy world, Christmas, Santa Claus, like, everything, the North Pole, everything that we kind of know and love about a traditional Christmas, and they modernized it. Santa Claus is nice and fit, and he works out and everything. And, he has like a, security force, and he's part of this like whole like mythological division and organization and stuff like that. And it definitely puts a more like modern day twist on it, which is pretty interesting. I actually thought it was a pretty unique concept. I enjoyed it. It kind of bites itself in the butt at some points because it is such a unique concept, and they kind of introduce this like broader mythological world. But they only obviously focus on Christmas and all the mythological creatures and stuff related to Christmas and the holidays, which makes sense because that's what the film is supposed to focus on. But it's like they kind of tease you with this whole like big open mythological world. Like you see the headless horseman, like, you hear this, you hear that, and then they're like, oh well, we're just going to focus on this very small part. um it would be cool if they broach that, in a future project, but I think broadening their horizon to a bigger mythological world kind of makes it a con. Like I said, it kind of probably adds a little bit to the tone. It probably makes the plot a little bit more generic, where you're just like, well, they just introduced this whole mythological world. Like, why did they do that if they're just going to focus on these characters? I think if they would have just kept the modern day twist, and they maybe would have just reserved it for the holidays and for Christmas, it would have made a lot more sense. However, besides that, the concept is unique, and it's something that we definitely haven't seen before, in regards to Santa Claus and Christmas. Um, the last pro, whether you see it as a pro or not, I thought some of the action sequences were entertaining. So, they might have not necessarily been the most like well executed, but they were entertaining. The Rock and Chris Evans fighting, Abominable Snowman on the beach, was pretty entertaining and fun. Even when they go to visit Krampus and they have the like slapping competition, that was fun. And then even like, the final battle at the end of the film, was entertaining. Again, they're not like, well rounded, like, oh my God, this is the best action sequence I've ever saw. One of the better ones of the film was when the mythological task force was trying to capture Jack to bring him to the North Pole to like basically enlist his help into finding Santa Claus. Um, and he was trying to escape, like, the people that were sent to capture him. That was probably one of the best action sequences of the film, to be honest. It kind of reminded me of his like old Captain America days. Um, so yeah, so I think some of those were definitely enjoyable, and they definitely brought some life to the film. And that is pretty much all I have really, in regards to Red One. I think, wrapping up this episode, I think I would definitely give this film a solid 7 out of 10. I think I would probably be on par with IMDb. Like I said, it wasn't the best thing since sliced bread. Is it a good movie that you should see for the holidays? If you want more of like a modern, like a different twist on Santa Claus and Christmas, yes, I think it's a good film to go see. Again, it does have a star-studded cast. It is funny at some points, and it definitely is an interesting film. So I still would recommend to go see this. Would I have you pay full price for it? No, I wouldn't. I would recommend going to see this on a Tuesday where your tickets are usually discounted. Go see it in like a matinee showing where you're going to get a discount. Do not see this movie at full price because it is not worth it. But I still think you should go see it if you can get some sort of discount. Um, but like I said, I think I would give it about 7 out of 10 suns. I think it's a pretty solid film. It has its flaws, but it also has things that kind of boost it up. So I think overall it's a pretty average holiday film. And yeah, like I said, definitely go see it, but do not pay full price. Definitely wait for some sort of discount day or matinee ticket, and still go see it. But that is going to do it for today's episode on Red One. If you're wondering where you can find more of this lovely podcast and channel where I sit here and I talk about shows and movies and I critique them and I review them and I tell you what I think about them, you could find us on social media at Instagram, TikTok, and I think that's it. Yeah, Instagram and TikTok at the Rogue Squadron. You could also find us on YouTube at the Rogue Squadron. So follow us on Instagram and TikTok to stay up to date for when the videos do get posted. And like I said, just keep track of your YouTube. Put those notification bells on. Subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed already, because that is where I post these lovely podcast episodes. Usually weekly. I try to do weekly. Sometimes life gets in the way, so I'm trying to catch up. But yes, like I said, check those social medias. Check us out on Instagram and TikTok, and yeah, just wait for this one to be posted. So if everything goes according to plan, this will be posted Monday, which would be, if I could pull up the calendar, which will be December 2nd. So you guys will have a Christmas movie to open up December with, which is pretty ironic, but it's just good timing on my part. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and until I see you all again, I hope you have a great day, great afternoon, great evening, a great night. Please be safe. Do not do anything stupid. Please enjoy Thanksgiving with your friends and family. Eat some good food, have some good drinks, watch some football, and yeah, enjoy some Black Friday shopping. Hopefully you guys get some good deals and enjoy the weekend. And pray for me as I continue to work through all of these really popular movies and try not to collapse from exhaustion. But other than that, thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye for now.